Look out any window in almost any city on Earth, and within a few seconds, you'll probably see one, a pigeon. They're everywhere, strutting across every park, crowding every square, lined up on every ledge and power line and statue. There are an estimated hundreds of millions of them living in our cities, eating our leftovers, thriving right alongside us. In some places, they outnumber every other bird combined. Now, here's a thought that probably never crossed your mind. Every single one of those pigeons is, technically, a bird, a plump, meaty bird, the same basic animal as the chicken you had for dinner or the turkey at a holiday feast. There is, quite literally, free meat walking around at your feet in every city in the world. So why don't we eat it? Why isn't pigeon on restaurant menus and grocery store shelves? Why does the idea of eating one make most people feel a little bit sick? The answer is one of the strangest food stories in human history, because here's the twist that changes everything. We used to eat pigeons constantly. We loved them. We bred them specifically to eat. So what happened? Let's find out. To understand why we don't eat pigeons now, you have to understand that for most of human history, we absolutely did. The pigeons you see in your city aren't some random wild bird. They're descended from the rock dove, a bird that naturally nests on cliffs and rocky ledges. And thousands of years ago, humans looked at that bird and realized something valuable. It breeds fast, it's easy to keep, and it tastes good. The ancient Egyptians raised them. The ancient Romans considered them a delicacy and built elaborate towers to house them, fattening young pigeons for lavish feasts. Across the Middle East, and later all across Europe, people built special structures called dovecotes, basically pigeon apartment buildings, specifically to farm these birds for meat and eggs. And this wasn't a rare treat. For centuries, a dovecote was a sign of status and a reliable food source, especially in winter when other fresh meat was scarce. Owning one was sometimes a privilege reserved for lords and nobility. Pigeon was food fit for the wealthy, and pigeon droppings were even prized as some of the most powerful fertilizer available. So let's be clear about this. The bird you now think of as a dirty pest was, for thousands of years, a farmed delicacy that people built monuments to house, which makes the question even sharper. How did we fall so completely out of love with it? Here's where the story takes its strange turn. Those farm pigeons, the ones kept in dovecotes and towers for food, they didn't stay locked up forever. Over centuries, birds escaped. Others were released or simply abandoned as farming methods changed, and cheaper meat like chicken became widely available. And these escaped domestic pigeons found something remarkable waiting for them: the human city. Think about what a city looks like, too. A rock dove. Skyscrapers and bridges and building ledges are basically artificial cliffs. Exactly the kind of terrain their wild ancestors nested on. Our streets are covered in dropped food, crumbs, and garbage. There are very few predators. It's warm, it's sheltered. For a pigeon, the modern city isn't a harsh environment. It's paradise. So the birds we bred for our tables escaped, moved into our cities, and thrived beyond anyone's imagination. The pigeon became the ultimate urban survivor. But in doing so, it stopped being livestock and became something else entirely. A wild, uncontrolled animal living in filthy conditions, eating garbage. And that transformation is the key to why. Your instinct now says, don't eat that. Let's get to the most practical reason, because it's a genuinely good one. You actually shouldn't eat a random city pigeon, and it's not just squeamishness. The problem isn't the pigeon itself. It's where it's been living and what it's been eating. A city pigeon spends its life pecking through garbage, gutters, and streets. It drinks from dirty puddles. It walks through and eats things contaminated with all kinds of bacteria and pollutants. Because of that, city pigeons can carry a range of diseases and parasites. They can harbor bacteria like salmonella, along with various parasites, and fungal infections in their droppings that can affect humans. Their feathers and waste can carry mites and other unpleasant hitchhikers. There's also the issue of pollution. City birds accumulate the toxins of the city, traces of heavy metals and chemicals from a lifetime of eating in a polluted environment. On top of that, in many cities, authorities try to control pigeon populations using poisons. So any given city pigeon could, in theory, have eaten something specifically designed to kill it, which you really don't want to then eat yourself. So the honest answer to why don't we eat city pigeons starts here, a wild bird raised on garbage. And pollution in a dirty environment is simply not safe or appetizing to eat. But, and this is important, that's a problem with the city, not with the pigeon. Because we absolutely do still eat pigeon, just not that one. Here's a fact that surprises almost everyone. Pigeon is on the menu at fancy restaurants right now, tonight, all over the world. It's just wearing a disguise. It's called Squab. Squab is the name for a young pigeon, raised specifically for food that hasn't yet learned to fly, and it is considered a genuine delicacy. It shows up in high-end French cuisine, in Chinese restaurants, in Middle Eastern and North African cooking. Chefs prize it for its tender, dark, rich meat. A squab dish at a nice restaurant can cost a serious amount of money. So what's the difference between squab and the pigeon on the sidewalk? Everything that matters. Squab comes from birds raised in clean, controlled farms, fed a proper diet, and harvested young. It's the same species, essentially, but a completely different life, and therefore a completely different, safe, and delicious food. This is the real heart of the answer. We didn't stop eating pigeon because pigeon is bad. We stopped eating the city pigeon because it became a wild scavenger we could no longer trust. The farmed version never went away. It just quietly became expensive while its feral cousins took over our streets and earned a terrible reputation. But safety isn't the whole story because plenty of things we happily eat aren't exactly clean in the wild. There's a deeper, more psychological reason we won't touch a city pigeon, and it comes down to how our brains decide what counts as food. Humans have a powerful instinct called disgust, and it's one of our best survival tools. We're wired to feel revulsion toward things associated with dirt, disease, and waste because avoiding them kept our ancestors alive, and the city pigeon has become the ultimate symbol of urban filth. We call them rats with wings. We shoo them away. We see them eating garbage every single day. Once an animal is mentally filed under pest, it becomes almost impossible to also file it under food. The two categories fight each other. It's the same reason most people in Western cultures won't eat rats or insects or city squirrels, even though all of them are eaten somewhere in the world. It's not about the actual taste or nutrition. It's about the label our culture has stuck on the animal. There's a class element too, as chicken became cheap, abundant, and clean feeling, sold in tidy plastic packaging with no reminder that it was ever alive. It became the normal meat. Pigeon, meanwhile, got tangled up with poverty, scavenging, and the dirt of the street. Eating one started to feel not just gross, but somehow shameful, like something you'd only do if you were desperate. And in fact, during hard times and wars, people did eat city pigeons to survive, which only reinforced the idea that it's a food of last resort. So the pigeon on your street carries a triple curse. It's genuinely unsafe. It triggers deep disgust, and it's socially coded as poor people's desperation food. That's a very hard reputation to come back from. So here's the fun question to end on. Could that ever change? Could we ever go back to eating pigeons on purpose? There's actually a real argument for it. Cities spend enormous amounts of money trying to control pigeon populations. The birds breed fast, and there's a nearly endless supply. In a world worried about the environmental cost of raising cattle and other meat, a free-roaming, fast-breeding urban bird looks, on paper, like an obvious food source. Some chefs and food thinkers have seriously proposed the idea of harvesting urban pigeons as a sustainable protein, but the obstacles are massive. You'd have to solve the contamination problem. You can't safely eat birds raised on street garbage and poison. That likely means capturing and then cleanly raising them, at which point you've basically just reinvented squab farming, which already exists. And even if you produced perfectly safe city pigeon meat, you'd still have to fight that deep wall of disgust in people's minds, convincing the average person to order the rat with wings they've been shooing away their whole life is a nearly impossible marketing job. So the likely answer is, We'll keep eating farm squab as a delicacy, and we'll keep ignoring the millions of feral pigeons around us, not because they couldn't feed us, but because history, hygiene, and our own psychology have quietly agreed that they never will. So the next time you walk through a city square and a cloud of pigeons scatters at your feet, take a second look. You're not just looking at a pest. You're looking at one of humanity's oldest farmed foods, a bird that fed emperors and nobles, that we built towers and monuments to house, that escaped our farms and conquered our cities so completely that we forgot it was ever dinner. The pigeon didn't change. We did. We got richer, cleaner meat, and we handed the streets over to the birds we used to prize. And now they strut around our cities as living fossils of a forgotten menu. Free meat that our history and our own minds have put permanently off limits. So I'll ask you directly. Now that you know the whole story, if it were raised clean and safe, would you actually eat a pigeon? Tell me honestly in the comments, and if this made you look at those birds a little differently. There are plenty more questions like this waiting for you on the channel. I'll see you in the next one.